The pandemic curbed the crowds, but celebrations across the world still took place to welcome the arrival of the new year. The pandemic tops the list of concerns for most world leaders, while Russia concentrates on security. Anti-apartheid campaigner Archbishop Desmond Tutu has been laid to rest in Cape Town after he died aged 90 last week. The world has been saying goodbye to 2021 after a year of dealing with a global pandemic that's still raging as we go into 2022. In the Russian capital Moscow, there were the usual spectacular display of fireworks, but not the regular crowds in Red Square, as COVID restrictions continue to limit celebrations. The festivities in Greece were also limited to lighting up the sky after the health minister banned music as the country copes with a surge in cases. In the German capital, even the fireworks were more muted this year, although the sky did come alive around Berlin's Brandenburg Gate to welcome in the coming year. Normally tens of thousands of people would be there to celebrate, but at present mass gatherings are forbidden by the government. As usual, the Eiffel Tower took centre stage in Paris, but with few crowds. French President Emmanuel Macron expressed hope for 2022 on Friday as the country registered an unprecedented 232,000 new COVID cases. But despite rapidly rising cases in Spain, around 7,000 people did gather in Madrid's Puerta del Sol for a fireworks display, eating grapes as tradition dictates and dancing to the rhythm of the clock's chimes. The annual spectacular light show in Sydney went ahead despite the city being at the centre of a surge in cases. Crowds were far smaller than in pre-pandemic years, when as many as 1 million revellers would pile into the city centre. But crowds were in evidence in Taiwan as people gathered at the 101 skyscraper in the capital Taipei on Friday night to bring in the new year. A spectacular display in Bangkok too late on Friday as 2021 drew to an end in Thailand. New Year's Eve prayers, which are usually held in Buddhist temples around the country, were held online instead. And the sky lit up from Dubai's Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest tower, as the clock struck midnight in the United Arab Emirates. Along with the fireworks, the other thing all countries have in common is hoping for a better year in 2022.
In the Roman Catholic calendar, January the 1st is dedicated to world peace. And Pope Francis has used the occasion to praise the role of women as peacemakers. Addressing a mass in St. Peter's Basilica, Francis said mothers know how to overcome obstacles and disagreements and to install peace. How much violence there is against women, he continued. Enough. To hurt a woman is to outrage God, who created humanity from a woman. Tweeting before the Mass, the Pope said a more peaceful world starts from the hearts of individuals and relationships in the family, and from there builds all the way up to relationships between peoples and nations.
As New Year's Eve celebrations took place around the globe, world leaders were referring to the pandemic that's led to the smaller crowds this year. In Germany, the new leader emphasised the need to go forward with the vaccine effort. We know that those who have not yet been vaccinated are particularly at risk of contracting the disease and suffering long and severe illness. I therefore appeal to you once again, get vaccinated. In the French capital, President Emmanuel Macron had a similar message. Vaccination is our surest ace. It strongly reduces transmission. It divides by 10 the number of severe forms of the illness. This is why, again, I appeal to the 5 million people who aren't vaccinated to undertake this simple gesture. For you, your compatriots, for our country. All of France is counting on you. And in London, the UK Prime Minister added his voice to the appeals to get jabbed.
And I want to speak directly to all those who have yet to get fully vaccinated. The people who think the disease can't hurt them. Look at the people going into hospital now. that could be you.
From China, where the pandemic began, Xi Jinping wanted to talk of his country's effort to stem the virus.
实现祖国完全统一是两岸同胞的
Up until now,
共同心愿
China has provided 2 billion COVID vaccine doses
全体
to more than 120 countries
携手
and international groups.
共创中华民族美好未来。
But in Russia, Vladimir Putin chose to concentrate on security and politics. We firmly and consistently defended our national interests, the security of the country and its citizens. We've promptly restored the economy and we're approaching implementation of strategic development goals. Of course, there are plenty of unsolved issues, but we have overcome this year in a dignified way.
The new year has begun like the last one, under the shadow of COVID. In France, the wearing of masks outdoors has become obligatory once again in city centres. With the infection rate running at over 200,000 cases per day, many residents are resigned to the return of the measure. It doesn't bother me, says this resident of Paris. We've already been through this last year. We're in the middle of a peak, so I really don't have any issue with this. It will last for a few weeks. I think we can all make the effort. We know this is going to go on for a few more years, so I support collective effort. Big New Year's Eve celebrations were cancelled in Austria, with the closing time in restaurants brought forward to 10 p.m. Vaccination is expected to be made compulsory from next month. Israel has finally got going with its 4th vaccination campaign. The measure had been approved in principle several weeks ago, but health authorities held fire on implementation. The country has also taken delivery of Pfizer's anti-COVID pills. In Indonesia, meanwhile, the government's adopted a strategy of closing down major roads as a way of reducing the circulation of the population, in the hope that the measure will also reduce the circulation of the virus.
It's 20 years since the euro was introduced. The banknotes and coins came into circulation in 12 countries on January the 1st, 2002. The currency has survived initial doubts, price concerns and a debt crisis that spread across the region. The euro is now used by 340 million people in 19 nations, from Ireland to Germany to Slovakia. In the US, at least 7 people were injured after a terrifying wildfire ripped through a neighborhood in Colorado. The blaze, whipped up by strong winds, destroyed buildings in its path, with officials fearing at least 500 homes may have been destroyed. Authorities said it was remarkable that no one was killed, and there are no reports of anyone missing after the fire. In South Africa, mourners have been attending the funeral service for Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who died on Boxing Day. His coffin was carried up the aisle by his grandchildren. The service was led by the Archbishop of Cape Town, Thabo Makgoba, and the Dean of St George's Cathedral, Michael Wieder. The famed anti-apartheid campaigner had requested a simple wooden coffin and a white carnation. Mourners included South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa.
If Archbishop Desmond Tutu were here, he would have said, hey, why are you looking so glum, so unhappy? He would have wanted to elicit a smile, a laughter from amongst all of us. That was the type of person that he was.
Tutu was 90 years old when he died last week. He'll be interred behind the pulpit of the cathedral where he'd preached for many years. A tireless activist, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for combating white minority rule in his country. He'll also be remembered for his continually positive outlook on life and happy, expressive nature.